Hello and welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I founded Oxford Clay, an eco-conscious pottery company. So on this podcast, we're going to be talking about all things pottery related, often with an eco-conscious twist, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery podcast. I'm Catherine and today we're going to be talking about metal oxides in pottery. So metal oxides are actually the main way of colouring pottery. So if you see pottery in a shop and it's coloured in any way, it's very likely to have been coloured with metal oxides. And the reason for this is that metal oxides are very strong pigment that don't burn out at the very high temperatures that potters fire their work to. So other colourants would simply just like burn away in the kiln. So metal oxides, great, let's use metal oxides to colour pottery, but there are some essential issues with metal oxides that make them like a more sort of ecologically harmful material to use for potters than other pottery materials. So this episode, we'll just go through the reasons why, and then we'll go through some alternatives for potters to use instead. Okay, so first of all, metal oxides, they're mined from the ground as metal ore. So they're basically made from the same ore that you would make a metal from. Okay, so the initial stage of making a metal oxide is to mine it from the ground as rock. And so the issues with this are that over time, metal ore grade, the grade of metal ore has actually decreased over time. So this is because, as more metal ore is extracted from the ground, that's gone basically to make metals. Mining companies are having to use they're having to mine deeper, and they're having to mine greater quantities of rock to effectively get the same amount of metal basically from the ore. So this is problematic because as time goes on, mining companies will just basically be needing to use more and more energy to mine metal ore from the ground. And the problem with this is that a lot of mines are they could be off-grid, or they could be in countries that use a lot of fossil fuels for their kind of national grid, if the mine is on-grid. So if the mine is off-grid, it will generally be using, some mines do use renewable energy, but many mines will primarily use diesel for basically powering all their mining equipment. And from the research I've done, I've learned that metal oxides actually use more energy from fossil fuels than other materials, like other pottery materials. And that's because a lot of the equipment used to kind of process it, haulage, mine it from the earth, is powered by diesel, basically. So metal oxides, more than other pottery materials, are contributing to kind of carbon emissions and also air pollution from the fact that they use more fossil fuels in terms of their mining practices. So that's one issue. And another issue is that the global supply chains of metal ore are quite often sort of complex, and they can also involve artisanal mining. So in another episode, I talk about cobalt and how cobalt is mined both by commercial mining companies and also by individual people working as artisanal miners. And the problem with the artisanal mining industry is that people are basically working in that industry without any kind of protection, any health and safety protection. There's human rights abuses, and lots of, unsafe working practices and health problems that miners experience, and also children can also be working in artisanal mining industry. So, so there are like many metals, metal ores, like metal oxides, effectively, that like where the supply chain is being fed by the artisanal mining sector. So it could be that the metal oxide you're using, it could be that, because the supply chains are kind of like quite often like mixed, the problem is that you might not be able to tell whether the metal oxide you're using has like been mined artisanally or by commercially mined by a commercial company, industrially mined, basically. So that's one issue. It's really difficult to tell like where your metal oxides originated from. So if you're interested in learning more about different metal oxides and like where they come from and what the impact of them is on the environment, I've actually written a book exactly on that topic, and it goes through each sort of glazing ingredient in pottery and kind of its impact on the environment, its impact on people, any issues associated with it. So that's in a book by Oxford Clay, by me, called Eco-Conscious Pottery Glazing. Make your own pottery glazes with minimal harm to humans, animals and the environment. And that's available on the Oxford Clay website. So say, you've heard this and you're thinking, oh no, I really want to kind of maybe move away from metal oxides, commercially mined metal oxides. What options do I have? Well, potters do have other options for colouring their work. Okay, so I'm going to go through 3 options that potters have for colouring their work. Okay, so the first option is that potters can actually use naturally coloured clays that are basically just mined from the earth, and they already have like a pigment in already. They already have like a metal oxide in. So usually that's iron oxide. And what you can do is you can use, they could use those clays. So say like, for example, like a high mod, it's called ball clay, and that is very high in iron. And you can mix that into a pottery glaze and it will give like a gentle colour. So often it's kind of like creams, it can be like ever so slightly like brown, very light green. And that is just coloured naturally by the clay, basically. The iron oxide occurring naturally in the clay. So that's one way to make a glaze from ball clay or other pigments that come from the earth directly, in terms of like, different clays can be naturally coloured. And, if you know where your clay is coming from, you know how it's mined, say like, the country that is mining that clay, you know that they have like robust health and safety legislation to protect the environment. You know that you can kind of like rest assured that that's like a good source of colour basically in your work. So if you wanted some recipes that use ball clay for making a pottery glaze, then again they're in the Eco-Conscious Pottery Glazing book. And there's lots of recipes in there, and it shows you like the colour of it basically. And they are lightly coloured, they're not going to be like bright colours like metal oxides, but still adds colour to work regardless. Okay, so the second way of adding colour is actually to use plant ashes in a glaze. So many plants will actually take up trace metals as they grow, and when you burn the plants, these trace metals stay in the tissues of the plant, and they can add colour to a glaze. So again, if you're interested in making your own plant ash glazes, so different plants will create like very different colours. That is something that you can definitely experiment with. I've been experimenting a lot with plant ash glazing, and seeing the different colours that different plants create. So again, it's not going to be like a bright colour, but you can get some really beautiful colours. Like if you've ever seen like rutile used in pottery, it's quite like a kind of bluey speckly type sort of effect in a glaze. A lot of plant ash glazes will really look like a rutile glaze, so they're really beautiful. So they'll have like kind of little speckles of blue, you know, like can be like little speckles of brown. They can, yeah, have like creams. There's pinks in there, like very, you know, light blues in there, light browns, and you know, green in some cases as well. So again, there's resources on the Oxford Clay website. There's a book on plant ash glazing and a video course as well. And the plant ash glazing book actually contains 60 different tests of 60 different different bits of plants that have been tested, so either like the leaves or the branches or like both, and you can see the different colors that those plants make. So that's a really good way of coloring your pottery as well, if you wanted to like move away from metal oxides, you know, and just move into like more like naturally colored pottery. So another way of colouring pottery as well is to use metal oxides that are made from recycled metal. So at the moment, I don't think there's anyone like commercially doing that, but as a potter, you can make your own metal oxides. So I've been making mine from copper and also iron. And if you wanted to learn how to do that yourself, again, there's a video course on the Oxford Clay website, and it's also in this book, this so eco-conscious pottery glazing book, Make Your Own Pottery Glazes with Minimal Harm to Animals, People and the Environment. It's in that book, and it goes through how you can actually make your own metal oxides. Just with things, you know, that you can eat that are easily available to you. So it's like scrap copper and brass, scrap iron, and you know, you can make that into like a powder, like a metal oxide powder that you can use to colour pottery green and brown as well. So yeah, so that's kind of like the ways of colouring pottery, the kind of some of the issues with using commercial metal oxides. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Yeah, the world of plant ash glazing is like my new favourite thing, and I've got completely obsessed with testing different plants. And yeah, so like I said, there's loads of resources there for you on the Oxford Clay website as well. Has lots of resources about plant ash glazing. So see you next time.